Next up on the Cosmic News Network, First Contact with Joshua Pope.
Good morning, Earthlings. Good. How you doing today? Good. How you doing today? Welcome to First Contact Radio. Welcome to First Contact Radio. To talk about all these things we're talking about is because in life, everything is energy. Every single thing that's out there.
Yo, it's First Contact with Joshua Pope. He's the man on the mic, just in case you didn't know it. Covering news from all around the globe, from the weather and space to UFOs. We'll talk politics and make you open your eyes. Conspiracy theories and government lies. We'll dig it all up and try to find the proof. Cause the times is the man, the truth. It's time.
First Contact Radio. We have arrived. First Contact Radio. We have arrived. First Contact Radio.
It's time to the man,
First Contact Radio. We have arrived. First Contact Radio.
Good morning, Earthlings. How you doing today? Welcome to First Contact Radio. Let's look at what we're dealing with today. It's 27th, right down here. 27th of January. Sun sign in Aquarius, moon sign in Taurus. Lots of aspects for the course of today. So, we know from our elements, because we're going to look at that first. Conscious mind, Aquarius, air sign, air moves. Air is about words and actions, the works that we do into the world. Then we have the unconscious mind, earth sign. Earth is stable. Earth doesn't move unless, of course, there's something severe like an earthquake, in which case there's a big shock, big change to something going on. So underlying our unconscious mind is some stability with it, figuring out things about the physical world because it's dealing with earth. However, the important thing about Taurus is the connection to the spirit world, that the Taurus, the Hebrew letter connected with it, is a reminder that we need to be connected with the spiritual world. Va, we need to hook that spiritual world together with the physical world, because that is the only way that we really are able to bring ourselves into life. It's kind of like the story in the Apocryphon of John, that even though the human, the atom, was created, it wasn't until it had that breath of spirit put into it that it actually came alive. So, same idea. In order for us to really be alive in this world, we have to be connected, the physical with the spirit. We're in the physical, enjoy the physical. We're here, but we're not of it. We're of a higher value. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. Okay, so these are the two. We got air on the conscious mind, movement, activity, earth on the unconscious mind. So as we go through the day, all these different aspects. First one here, 7:34, there was an aspect between Taurus, the moon sign, and Mars. Brings in some energy, passion, creativity. As we get to the 9 o'clock hour, Venus moves into Pisces. So our imagination moves into an area where there's a lot of water, a lot of emotions and feelings. Mercury and Taurus are at a square with each other at 10:55 a.m. That begins, and that square there is a lesson between how we're going to communicate and what we learn from Taurus the bull. So we learn this lesson. It helps us with our ability to communicate. As we continue on down here, let's see if you can, I don't know if you can see this that well, so let's fix that. Okay, so as we get down here, we're going to take a look at this sign here, which is a, well, looks like Chiron. Jupiter jumps into the mix later, a square, and Uranus later tonight gets in the mix with Mercury. So we have some expansion of what we're feeling, of these Taurian ideals. We have communication that's being challenged to express itself differently with Mercury. Alright, so that's what we're dealing with today. Over here at the Jewish calendar, today is 7 Shavat, year 5775. Daily thought, think his thoughts. Science is the study of those things God thinks about by one of his thoughts. Torah is the study of God thinking. Moon is in the first quarter, 55% of the way full, making its way to the full moon. Solar wind currently at 467.7 kilometers per second. Planetary K index at the moment is quiet, between a 2 and a 3. Big corona hole on the bottom. Nothing of a notification that we are going to get hit by any solar wind from it, but I'm certain that will probably happen because it usually does when we get those big corona holes there for a period of time. M-class flare possibilities up to 30. X-class is up to 5. Geomagnetic storm activity is relatively low, 1 to 20% in the mid-latitudes, as high as 30% or low as 15 in the high latitudes. And this week up in the sky, says if I had to choose one deep sky object to demonstrate the appeal of binocular astronomy, it would probably be to the Pleiades, writes Gary Sironok. The Pleiades are certainly a nice sight overall, but the cluster also holds a secret in its center. The 8th magnitude double star South 437, barely resolvable with the 10 times glasses. Okay, so look in the sky tonight. You get the moon. Off to the left of the moon, the Pleiades. And then below the Pleiades, Aldebaran. Orion's way down below it here. Taurus. Okay, so you can kind of get an idea what you'd be looking at tonight. And that is our cosmic weather for today. UFO News is up next. Let's do it.
This is the UFO News with Joshua Poet.
All right, Dirk, thank you very much. So our first story is one that you've already heard. This is just another release of it. This is the information about Project Blue Book files being released. U.S. Air Force releases UFO files onto the internet. We have a variety of sources, 40s, 50s, 60s, all their files right here. This is from CNN. It's enough to make Mulder and Scully seethe with envy. Nearly 130,000 pages of declassified Air Force files on UFO investigations and sightings are now available in one place online. Declassified records about UFOs have long existed on microfilm in the National Archives of Washington, D.C. Many of them also live on websites devoted to the topic, sometimes free, sometimes not. But UFO enthusiast John Greenwald says his database, Project Blue Book collection, is the first to compile every single declassified document from the Blue Book Project, headquartered at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio from 1947 through 1969. The collection consists of files from Project Blue Book, sign, grudge, the names given officially to the investigations. Okay, so you heard that story. Here's just some more links so you can get to everything you need. Here we have a UFO shocked the residents of the city of Frías, Argentina. This UFO was seen in Argentina, also in Brazil on the same day. I managed to locate a video in Brazil of a close-up of the UFO. It looks awesome. Yes, from my research, I have read about orange ships that glow from a sighting back in 1981 when Carl Diaz met with aliens in Mexico. Alright. Strange phenomenon was spotted yesterday afternoon. It was recorded by several residents of the city of Frías. Strange light performed movements observed until it disappeared. And here's a video. This is 3 minutes 24 seconds. Alright, very interesting. UFO definitely looks like it's on fire. But cool. Alright, moving on. Museum exhibit features extraterrestrial life research and artificial intelligence. People who want to know more in detail about the search for alien life can check out a touring museum exhibit titled Alien Worlds and Androids. by global experience specialists. Focusing on the question whether humans are alone in the vast universe, visitors of the exhibit will get a chance to join scientists in their search for extraterrestrial life within and beyond the solar system. Visitors can also learn more about alien-like creatures discovered on Earth, as well as about the technologies used in exploring remote solar systems and extreme Earth environments. The exhibit displays from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in NASA and features some methods used by scientists to explore space and search for ET life. It also presents robots and artificial intelligence with a display of C-3PO, Iron Man, and other popular Hollywood robots. What this kind of exhibit isn't new. It only shows that museums from around the world continue to pique the curiosity of visitors, encourage them to imagine the limitless immensity of the universe and its potential dwellers. All right, moving on. Here's a compilation of sightings. It's a 3-minute, 31-second compilation of sightings in Australia. This is recorded with a P8079 HP night vision camera. Alright, so this is the object here we're looking for. Let me just zip through. There's nice movement. There's another. It's a good compilation. A lot of little sightings taking place in here. There's this one right here. Interesting. Okay, moving on. UFOs. 2 UFOs over Florida hover and change color. This was seen this week and recorded over Miami, Florida, looking northeast direction from Brickell. Started as a single light that was changing between what looks to be white and red colors, hovering over the city. Then another one came into the sky, and they seemed to have started interacting together. Eventually got a bit scary because one of them seemed to have started to approach the individual recording it. After doing some research on YouTube, other videos show a very similar occurrence. Yes, it is possible to be drones, but is it likely? Until it can be identified, it is still a UFO. The object seems to have also project sounds described as hissing or wobbling sounds that had a few low and high pattern pitches. However, these sounds were also being heard along with the city noises that are always there. So it's 1-minute, 26-second video. There's our object. Once you enlarge this, certainly it makes it much easier to see. Very interesting indeed. 2 like ships meeting out there in space. Alright, I'm going to move along from here. UFO Digest article from Doc Vega says ADRIAN SALBUCHI warns of alien invasion. Many of us in America are wondering just what happened to the federal government under the President Obama White House. For large segments of our society, the frustration over scandal after scandal never prosecuted, such as the NFA spine scandals, the IRS persecution of conservative election organizations, the fast and furious gun running, the deaths of Americans overseas under the Benghazi massacre, the Salander scandal, along with many, many more lawless operations sanctioned by the administration, has caused widespread mistrust in our society. Although many of us wonder how such blatant violations of the law could go unpunished, there are other patriots of foreign nations who have seen what is going on in the U.S. and have successfully fought the powers of out-of-control government. ADRIAN SALBUCHI is one of them. His own nation of Argentina faces much the same adversity brought on by lawless government and corrupt banking system. SALBUCHI led a movement to fight to regain control of Argentina from the hands of the banking system that was doing much the same as the Federal Reserve has done in America. SALBUCHI also gave lectures, talk radio talk shows, and wrote extensively on how the people of Argentina or any nation should fight to remain sovereign and free of the corrupt powers that would impose big government, tyranny, and monetary control on the people's currency. The Argentinian people won by taking matters into their own hands. ADRIAN SALBUCHI weighs in. He said, when interviewed by Jeff Rentz about the plight of Americans under the regime of the Obama administration, he made some interesting analogies and also issued a bizarre warnings as well over the U.S. dilemma. He characterized Barack as the CEO of a corrupt corporation that moves in to conduct an unfriendly takeover in another company by imposing controls on stocks, corporate charters, replacing key personnel and management, and forcibly taking away ownership without the consent of the stockholders. He makes a comparison the way America has been taken hostage by the federal government, not only in conflict with the U.S. Constitution, but with the American people as well. He said the federal government is transferred from an entity dedicated to serving the people to a virtual dictatorship by virtue of executive orders being perpetrated by President Obama. Let's get down here. Okay, it's a little bit political. Said when questioned, says one can look back in history to the Orson Welles radio show of 1937, which was a fireside theater play turned into an alarming misunderstanding that panicked thousands of Americans to see that such a deception could work. With the recent discovery that War of the Worlds radio broadcast of a play based on H.G. Wells' novel was indeed a social experiment, there appears to be alarming possibilities. There have been similar plans drawn up around the 20th century to explore such scenarios, but they never were implemented. Okay. And here it says, I met with Robert Eminger, producer of a very successful primetime UFO documentary, that told me of witnessing firsthand of the incredible psychological warfare that could be unleashed by the U.S. military upon its enemies should the opportunity present itself. While at the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, he saw things that were mind-boggling. He spoke of strange capabilities of converting afterburner heat from fighter jets into holographic images that could trick the mind, and wonder of the new electronic warfare that was in the late 70s. Think of what they could pull off now. Okay, so interesting article. And one last piece here, also from UFO Digest, and this is by Teresa J. Morris. Says, we've heard the State of the Union address. Now we are ready for anything. Our President of the USA mentioned our open source internet and man in space. Now what? We add that there will be not knowing that things change. We in 2015 share the fact that we are to tune into the universal forces consciousness. Our alien ET UFO community is real and working to identify both spacecraft not of Earth origin and those that are of Earth origin. We are sharing memories and knowing that we are aliens. We are now sharing ancient mysteries. Ancient aliens and now alternative culture radio shows that people claiming to be alien hybrids of all kinds, such as part Archon, Arthurian, Reptilian, Pleiadian, Andromedan, Venusian, Martian, Nordic, yet born on Earth. We share cosmic connection portals, dimensions, realms, galaxies, universes, multiverse, metaverse, exoverse, xenoverse, omniverse, alphaverse, omegaverse, and the ever-expanding consciousness. We would determine that we are expanding our universes. We are the ones making the energy flow as the outer from the inner core. The inner worlds, we are sparking a share of light, soul, science that is yet to be able to determine. The source, of course, is the force from within us that drives us all. We know that there is intelligence at the universal core as the force we call source. Now to determine how many life forms as humanoids there are, how many worlds are inhabited with humanoids is our quest. Get ready for the shift into space where all of the source began as macrocosm from the microcosm. Now if we can just figure out how, who, or what was the original microcosm, we created all the source, called the source of the force. Universal life force includes space. Control over all creation is the strongest force in all things that maintains universal life. I've seen it manifest and cannot explain it yet. However, it's coming to us in this time. Science has determined that we have weaker and stronger forces. Gravity's laws of the universe we cannot change. Law of thinking, law of supply, law of attraction, law of receiving, law of increase, law of compensation, law of non-resistance, law of forgiveness, law of sacrifice, law of obedience, and the law of success are referred to as the forgotten laws. The observation that there are underlying irregularities in nature dates to prehistoric times, since recognition of the cause and effect relationships, recognition that there are laws of nature, recognition of regularities, independent scientific laws. We are only limited by our own minds inside the matrix, entanglement, animism, attribution of the effects that we have already readily obvious cases, such as the meteorological, astronomical, and biological phenomena. The ETs know of actions in various gods, spirits, supernatural beings alien to us, but not to extraterrestrials. Observation and speculation about nature were intimately bound up with metaphysics. Time for us to understand us. All right, so very good article. Read through it again, because there's always a lot to gain from these articles when you read through them more than once. That's our UFO news. When I get back, we're going to continue on with the next document or text from the Nag Hammadi documents that were found, the Nag Hammadi text. So I will be right back.
Come into our circle, Great Spirit. Fill our souls with peace.
Continuing on. So I hope you enjoyed the reading of the Apocryphon of John. That was quite insightful. Certainly tells a story that we don't really hear when we read through the New Testament. Now these books, they are books that go back to the times of when all the other Gospels were written. They just weren't included. Now you can see why, right? Certainly anything that has reference to these archons was left out because we don't really hear much about them. So I'm going to continue on with some more, and you're going to see some more similarities. There's 13 codexes. I've just been reading the Apocryphon of John. I read from one of those. There's multiple translations. And the next one I'm going to go to is this one down here, Origin of the World, on the origin of the world. Thought this would be a good one to move to next. Translated by Hans Gebhard Bethage and Bentley Layton. Here we go. And just remember the stories, that we read in the other ones, the words and things, and see if anything is familiar here. Seeing that everybody, gods of the world and mankind, says that nothing existed prior to chaos, I, in distinction of them, shall demonstrate that they are all mistaken, because they are not acquainted with the origin of chaos, nor with its root. Here is the demonstration. How well it suits all men on the subject of chaos to say that it is a kind of darkness. But in fact it comes from a shadow which has been called by the name darkness. And the shadow comes from a product that has existed since the beginning. It is moreover clear that it existed before chaos came into being, and that the latter is posterior to the first product. Let us therefore concern ourselves with the facts of the matter, and furthermore with the first product which came, from which chaos was projected, and in this way the truth will be clearly demonstrated. After the natural structure of the immortal beings had completely developed out of the infinite, a likeness then emanated from pistis, which means faith. So a likeness emanated from faith, and it is called wisdom, or Sophia. It exercised volition and became a product resembling the primeval light, and immediately her will manifested itself as a likeness of heaven, having an unimaginable magnitude. It was between the immortal beings and those that came into being after them. Like she, Sophia, functioned as a veil dividing mankind from the things above. Now, the eternal realm, which is also called an aeon, the eternal realm of truth, or the aeon of truth, has no shadow outside of it, for the limitless light is everywhere within it. But its existence is shadow, which has been called by the name darkness. From it there appeared a force presiding over the darkness, and the forces that came into being subsequent to them called the shadow the limitless chaos. From it every kind of divinity sprouted up, together with the entire place, so that also shadow is posterior to the first product. It was in the abyss that shadow appeared, deriving from the aforementioned pistis, or faith. Then shadow perceived that there was something mightier than it, and felt envy. And when it had become pregnant of its own accord, suddenly engendered jealousy. Since that day, the principle of jealousy amongst all the eternal realms and their worlds has been apparent. Now, as for that jealousy, it was found to be an abortion without any spirit in it. Like a shadow, it came into existence in the vast watery substance. Then the bile that came into being out of the shadow was thrown into a part of chaos. Since that day, a watery substance has been apparent, and what sank with it flowed away, being visible in chaos, as with a woman giving birth to a child. All of her superfluities flow out. Just so, matter came into being out of shadow, and was projected apart, and did not depart from the chaos. Rather, matter was in chaos, being in part of it. And when these things had come to pass, then pistis came and appeared over the matter of chaos, which had been expelled from like an aborted fetus, since there was no spirit in it. For all of it, chaos was limitless darkness and bottomless water. Now when pistis, or faith, saw that she had what had resulted from her defect, she became disturbed, and the disturbance appeared as a fearful product. It rushed to her in the chaos. She turned to it and blew into its face into the abyss, and below all the heavens. And when pistis Sophia desired to cause the thing that had no spirit to be formed into a likeness and to rule over matter, and over all her forces, there appeared for the first time a ruler out of the waters, lion-like in appearance, androgynous, having great authority with him, and ignorant of when he had come into being. Now when pistis Sophia saw him moving about in the depths of the water, she said to him, "Child, pass through here," whose equivalent is Yaldabaoth. Since that day there appeared the principle of verbal expression, which reached the gods and the angels and mankind. And what came into being as a result of verbal expression, the gods and the angels and mankind finished. Now as for the ruler, Yaldabaoth, he is ignorant of the force of pistis. He did not see her face. Rather he saw in the water the likeness that spoke with him, and because of that voice he called himself Yaldabaoth. But Aniel is what the perfect call him, for he was like a lion. Now which had come to the authority over matter, pistis Sophia withdrew up her light. So right here we're saying that Yaldabaoth is ignorant of the force of pistis, which is faith. So here we have Yaldabaoth, ignorant of faith. Okay. When the ruler saw his magnitude, and it was only upon himself that he saw nothing else except for the water and the darkness. Then he supposed that it was he alone who existed. His was completed by verbal expression, and it appeared as a spirit moving to and fro in the waters. And when the spirit appeared, the ruler set apart the watery substance, and what was dry was divided into another place, and from that matter he made for himself an abode, and he called it heaven, and from that matter the ruler made a footstool, and he called it earth. Next the ruler had a thought consistent with his nature, and by means of verbal expression he created an androgyny. He opened his mouth and cooed to him. When his eyes had been opened, he looked at his father, and he said to him, "Ee." Then the father called him Io, or Yao. And then he created a second son. He cooed him, and he opened his eyes, and he said to his father, Eh. And his father called him Elohai. Next, his father created a third son. He cooed to him, opened his eyes, and he said to his father, As. His father called him Astapheos. And these are the three sons of the father: Yao, Eloi, Astiaphos. 7 appeared in chaos, androgynous. They have their masculine names and they have their feminine names. The feminine name is Pranoia, another name for forethought, Sambathas, which is weak. So the feminine name is Pranoia, Sambathas, which is weak. And his son is called Yao. His feminine name is lordship. Sabaoth, his feminine name is deity. Adonais, his feminine name kingship. Eleos, feminine name jealousy. Oreos, feminine name is wealth. And Astaphios, feminine name Sophia, or wisdom. These are the 7 forces of the 7 heavens of chaos, and they were born androgynous, consistent with the immortal pattern that existed before them, according to the wish of Pistis, so that the likeness of what had existed since the beginning might reign to the end. You will find in effect these names in the forces of the male entities in the archangelic book of the prophet Moses, and the names of the female entities in the first book of Norea. Now the prime parent, Yaldabaoth, since he possessed great authorities, created heavens for each of his offspring through verbal expression, created them beautiful as dwelling places, and in each heaven he created great glories, 7 times excellent, thrones and mansions and temples, and also chariots and divergent spirits up to an invisible one in their glories. Each one has these in his heaven, mighty armies of gods and lords and angels and archangels, countless myriads, so that they might serve. The account of these matters you will find in the precise matter in the first account of Aurea. And they were completely from heaven as far up as the 6th heaven, namely that of Sophia. The heaven and his earth were destroyed by the troublemaker that was below them all. And the 6 heavens shook violently, for the forces of chaos knew who it was that destroyed the heaven that was below them. And when Faith, or Pistis, knew about the breakage resulting from the disturbance, she sent forth her breath and bound him and cast him down into Tartaros. Since that day the heaven, along with its earth, has considered itself through Sophia, the daughter of Yesubeth, she who is below them all. Now when the heavens had consolidated themselves along with their forces and their administration, the prime parent became insolent, and he was honored by all the army of angels, and all the gods and their angels gave blessing and honor to him. And for his part he was delighted, and continually boasted, saying to them, I have no need of anyone. He said, It is I who am God, and there is no other one that exists apart from me. And when he said this, he sinned against all the immortal beings, who gave an answer, and they laid it to his charge. Then when Pistis saw the impiety of the chief ruler, she was filled with anger. She was invisible. She said, You are mistaken, Samael. In other words, mean blind God. You are mistaken. There is an immortal man of light, who has been in existence before you, and who will appear amongst your mottled forms, and he will trample you to scorn, just as the potter's clay is pounded, and you will descend to your mother, the abyss, along with those that belong to you. For at the consummation of your works, the entire defect has become visible out of the truth. It will be abolished, and it will cease to be, and will be like what has never been. Saying this, Pistis revealed her likeness of her greatness in the waters, and in doing so, she withdrew up her light. Now when Sabaoth, the son of Yaldabaoth, heard the voice of Pistis, he sang praises to her, and he condemned the father at the word of Pistis. And he praised her because she had instructed them about the immortal man and his light. Then Pistis Sophia stretched out her finger and poured upon him some light from her light, to be a condemnation of his father. When Sabaoth was illuminated, he received great authority against all the forces of chaos, and since that day he has been called the Lord of the Forces. He hated his father, the darkness, and his mother, the abyss, and he loathed his sister, the thought of the prime parent which moved to and fro upon the waters. And because of his light, all the authorities of chaos were jealous of him. And when they had become disturbed, they made a great war in the 7 heavens. Then, when Pistis Sophia had seen the war, she dispatched 7 archangels to Sabaoth from her light. They snatched him up to the 7th heaven. They stood before him as attendants. Furthermore, she sent 3 more archangels and established a kingdom for him over everyone, so that he might dwell above the 12 gods of chaos. Now when Sabaoth had taken his place of repose in return for his repentance, Pistis also gave to him her daughter Zoe, life, together with great authority, so that she might instruct him in all the things that exist in the 8th heaven. And he had authority. He made himself first of all mansions. It was huge, magnificent, 7 times as great as all those exist in the 7 heavens. And before the mansion he created a throne, which was huge, and upon a 4-faced chariot called cherubim. Now the cherubim is 8 squares per each of the 4 corners, lion forms and calf forms and human forms and eagle forms, so that all the forms amount to 64 forms, and 7 archangels that stand before it. He is the 8th, and has authority. All the forms amount to 72. Furthermore, from this chariot the 72 gods took shape. They took shape so that they might rule over the 72 languages of the people, and by that throne he created order, serpent-like angels called seraphim, which praise him at all times. Therefore he created a congregation of angels, thousands and myriads, numberless, which resembled the congregation in the 8th heaven, and a firstborn called Israel, which is the man that sees God, and another being called Jesus Christ, who resembles the Savior above in the 8th heaven, and who sits at his right upon a revered throne, and at his left there sits the Virgin of the Holy Spirit upon a throne and glorifying him. And the 7 virgins stand before her, possessing 30 harps and psalteries and trumpets, glorifying him. And all the armies of the angels glorify him, and they bless him. Now where he sits is upon a throne of light. Within a great cloud that covers him. And there was no one with him in the cloud except Sophia, the daughter of Pistis, instructing him about all the things that exist in the 8th heaven, so that the likeness of those things might be created in order that his reign might endure until the consummation of the heavens, of the chaos and their forces. Now Pistis Sophia set him apart from the darkness and summoned him to her right, and the prime parent she put at her left. Since that day right has been called justice, left called wickedness. Now because of this they received a realm, and the congregation of justice and wickedness stand upon a creature all. Thus when the prime parent of chaos saw his son Sabaoth and the glory that was in him, he perceived that he was the greatest of all the authorities of chaos, and he envied him. And having become wrathful, he engendered death out of death, and death was established over the 6th heaven, for Sabaoth had been snatched up from her, and thus the number of the 6 authorities of chaos was achieved. Then death, being androgynous, mingled with his own nature, and begot 7 androgynous offspring. These are the names of the male ones: jealousy, wrath, tears, sighing, suffering, lamentation, bitter weeping. And these are the names of the female ones: wrath, pain, lust, sighing, curse, bitterness, quarrelsomeness. They had intercourse with one another, and each begot 7, so that they amount to 49 androgynous demons, and their names and their effects you will find in the Book of Solomon. And in the presence of these, Zoe, who was with Sabaoth, created 7 good androgynous forces, and these are the names of the male ones: the unenvious, the blessed, the joyful, the true, the unbegrudging, the beloved, and trustworthy. Also, as regards to the female ones, their names are peace, gladness, rejoicing, blessedness, truth, love, faith. And from these many goods and innocent spirits, their influences and their effects you will find in the conflagrations of the fates of heaven that is beneath the 12. And having seen the likeness of Pistis in the waters, the prime parent grieved very much, especially when he heard her voice, like the first voice that had called to him out of the waters. And when he knew it was she who had given a name to him, he sighed. He was ashamed on account of his transgressions, and when he had come to know in truth that immortal man of light had been existing before him, he was greatly disturbed, for he had previously said to all the gods and their angels that it was he who was God, and that no one existed apart from him. For he had been afraid that they might know that another had been in existence before him, and might condemn him. But he, being devoid of understanding, scoffed at the condemnation, and acted recklessly. He thought, if anyone existed before me, let it appear, so that we may see its light. And immediately, behold, light came out of the eighth heaven above, and passed over all of the heavens of earth. And when the prime parent saw that the light was beautiful as it radiated, he was amazed, and he was greatly ashamed. As that light appeared, a human appearance appeared within it, very wonderful, and no one saw it except the prime parent and Pranoya, who was with him. Yet its light appeared to all the forces of the heavens. Because of this, they were all troubled by it. So when Pranoya saw that emissary, she became enamored of him. But he hated her because she was of the darkness. But she desired to embrace him, and she was not able to. When she was unable to assuage her love, she poured out her light upon the earth, and since that day the emissary has been called Atom of Light, whose rendering is the luminous man of blood, and the earth spread over him, Holy Adaman, whose rendering is the Holy Land of Adamantine. Since that day all the authorities have honored the blood of the Virgin, and the earth was purified on account of the blood of the Virgin. But most of all, the water was purified through the likeness of Pista Sophia, who has appeared to their prime parent in the waters. Just then, it has been said, through the waters, the holy water, since it vivifies all, purifies it. Out of that first blood, Eros appeared, being androgynous. His masculinity is Himerineus, being from fire, from the light. His femininity, that is with him, a soul of blood, is from the stuff of Pranoya. He is very lovely in his beauty, having a charm beyond all the other creatures of chaos. Then all the gods and their angels, when they beheld Eros, became enamored of him, and appearing in all of them, he set them afire, just as from a single lamp many lamps are lit, and one and the same light is there, but the lamp is not diminished. And in this way Eros became dispersed in all the created beings of chaos, and was not diminished, just as from the midpoint of light and darkness. Eros appeared at the midpoint of the angels and mankind. The sexual union of Eros was consummated, so that out of the earth the primal pleasure blossomed. The woman followed earth, and marriage followed woman. Birth followed marriage, dissolution followed birth. After that Eros, the grapevine sprouted up out of the blood which had been shed over the earth. Because of this, those who drank of it conceived the desire of sexual union, and after the grapevine, a fig tree and a pomegranate tree sprouted up from the earth, together with the rest of the trees, all species having with them their seed from the seed of the authorities and the angels. Then justice created paradise, being beautiful and being outside of the orbit of the moon, in the orbit of the sun, in the land of the wantonness, in the east, in the midst of the stones, and desire in the midst of the beautiful appearing appetizing trees, and the tree of eternal life as it appeared by God's will to the north of paradise, so that it might make eternal the souls of the pure, who shall come forth from the mottled forms of poverty at the consummation of the age. Now the color of the tree is like the sun, and its branches are beautiful. Its leaves are like those of the cypress. Its fruit is like a bunch of grapes when it is white. Its height goes as far as heaven, and next to it the tree of knowledge, or gnosis, having the strength of God. Its glory is like the moon when fully radiant, and its branches are beautiful. Its leaves are like fig leaves. Its fruit is as a good appetizing date. And this tree is to the north of paradise, so that it might arouse the souls from the torpor of the demons, in order that they might approach the tree of life and eat of its fruit, and so condemn the authorities and their angels. The effect of this tree is described in the sacred book, to wit, it is you who are the tree of knowledge when it is in paradise, which is in paradise, from which the first man ate, and which opened his mind, and he loved his female counterpart, and condemned the other alien likeness, and loathed them. After that, the olive tree sprouted up, which was to purify the kings and the high priest of righteousness who were to appear in the last days, since the olive tree appeared out of light of the first Adam for the sake of the urgent that they were to receive. All right, I'm going to stop right there because there's a bunch more. Certainly a lot going on here, but we're hearing characters' names that we don't hear when we read through the New Testament or the Old Testament. Yaldabaoth, big character. We heard Sabaoth, we heard that name, Adonai Sabaoth. He's one of the deities that we hear the name of. And so what we seem to find is that it seems to separate a lot of characters, a lot of different names. Perhaps they are the same being. Perhaps these are all different beings. In many cases, they seem to be different beings. But we also see that there's multiple names that one being can go by. So, as we start to unweave this story, we start to see there was much more going on with the creation of the world than just the Bible telling the version in Genesis, that this is much more involved and helps us to see a little bit more about where we truly came from. So there you go. I'm going to continue on that. It's probably going to take the rest of this week. Today's already, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So I'm sure it's going to take a few days to get through this and then an explanation of it. So you read it. I'm going to keep reading it. I'm going to delve into study on it as well to understand. But what you're going to find as we go from one story to the next among these various writings of the Nag Hammadi text is you're going to find synchronicities, and you're going to find a story that weaves together and it tells the same story. Maybe this was all one author that put these together. Maybe these are all multiple authors. But whatever the case may be, there's a similarity to what they're all saying in each one of these stories that isn't being told and hasn't been told to us here on Earth. Okay? Now, one of the things that's mentioned often is this veil of forgetfulness that occurs, this sleep phase that all humans go through when we enter the Earth. And this article here speaks directly to that, the veil of forgetfulness. From Greg Prescott, it says, "Why can't we remember our previous lives? It is only within the third density evolutionary process that the veil of forgetfulness exists. If there was no potential for misunderstanding, there would be no experience. It is necessary for the third density entity to forget where it comes from so that the mechanism of confusion or free will may operate upon the newly individualized consciousness complex. So apparently the need to make choices without conscious understanding of the all ramifications is necessary evolutionary step in the growth of an entity. In other words, we need to learn faith. If there were no veil of forgetfulness, then one would always understand the ramifications of one's choice, and life would be entirely predictable. In a predictable system, free will cannot exist. The veil of forgetfulness is a semi-permeable etheric membrane which surrounds the consciousness of a person in physical form. Its purpose is the same as the blinders that are put around the eyes of a horse pulling a cart through a busy city. The veil keeps humans from noticing the many alternative realities and possibilities that exist around them every moment that we are alive. For some, the veil is subtle enough to keep them from being distracted by the other side. For others, its density and all pervasiveness results in spiritual blindness. To penetrate a person's veil of forgetfulness means to create a psychic leak in the reality bubble for the individuals. The hole may be small, like a needle applying an infusion of necessary medicine, or it may be large enough to cause a hemorrhage of knowledge and awareness that results in a classic case of schizophrenia. Any physical or emotional trauma can produce a break in the veil, though through that wound can flow a kind of fluid which acts as a conductor and produces a link to an alternative self, which an individual is operating at other levels of the multiverse. In a sense, it's like having the tuner on the radio dial positioned so, though considerable static, you can hear two stations at once. Penetration of the veil does not have to be an accident. Some people purposely try to make contact with the other side. They can do so with focused meditation, drug usage, breathwork, visualization, hypnosis, automatic writing, or any one of other several means. The key factor we must deal with here is the idea of what is found on the other side is just as real as what is found here in physical form. The basic difference is the two is the density of the people and the objects contacted. Trying to discredit the real-life experience of someone who has truly transversed the veil is a near impossible task. Those who interrogated Joan of Arc would hardly agree. Once a person has been there, really been there, there can be no denying what he or she knows to be real. The Veil of Forgetfulness literally shields the new entity from the conscious interaction with memories from previous incarnations. This function is chosen and is important to preserve the individualization of the new entity and to preserve the free will of the new entity. But that does not mean the veil cannot be penetrated if that is in line with the will of the entity considering such an action, but must be chosen and then achieved. You won't know that you are on the path of being an ascended master yet, as though it's another test of the soul advancement. Eventually you will just know your ideas will someday be highly regarded. Spiritual law defies the law of time, which puts everyone under a veil of forgetfulness. The law was designed for a sense of order without the remembrance and burdens of past lives. All right, more to the article here. A lot more to the article. And it says, we use the term spiritual awakening. What are we really awakening from? Okay, so very good. So part of what we're awakening from is ignorance. I mean, that is the entire message that have seemed to be getting from these Nag Hammadi scriptures, that it's all about ignorance, that the first being that came forth from the darkness, Yaldabaoth, was a being that came out that was born out of ignorance, and this ignorance has been passed down to humanity because that same character, Yaldabaoth, who came out of the darkness, is the same creator God of our universe. It's the same creator God that is in the Old Testament. So the God that we've been taught to consider as our parent, our creator, is nothing more than the being from the darkness, the one that over time has been referred to as the devil, as, you know, the adversary. So things are kind of backwards when we look at it, when we look at what is going on in our Bible and the beings that we are actually paying attention to because we're told that we need to. We need to reconsider, and that's why all these same stories, when we really pay attention to them, they all point us in the right direction of understanding what's really going on behind the scenes. And what's really going on only is discovered when we move past our state of ignorance into a state of wisdom. All right, here's a article or a message today from Hilarion.
Hilarion.
January 25th through February 1st, 2015, by Marlene Swetleshoff.
Hilarion.
Beloved ones, many of you are finding the adage "know thyself" as a common theme that is shared by all at this time in one form or another. The fine-tuning and recalibrating is still taking place, and now you look ever more closely within yourselves to look at all the patterns you have played out throughout your lifetime, and are now willing to face self in all its many facets. You are willing to take full responsibility for all that has shown up in your lives. You know you are the one who first created the experience in order to bring this pattern to the surface as that which has limited you in your forward movement and which needs to be transmuted and released. Open your hearts wider to this experience and be willing to see the beauty of the gift it has given you. It has brought you freedom from self-imposed suffering and has assisted you to move beyond former limitations, sometimes in unexpected and totally surprising ways. You now look at how you may further allow the unfolding of your greater perceptions, seeing your life and the events in it from the perspective of your divine self. You see the dramas playing out around you and lovingly detach from them. You realize that there are always cycles, ebbs, and flows in the patterns that are unfolding. You resolve to work in harmony with these energies rather than resisting the gifts of awareness that they bring. You are being moved on the path towards greatness of spirit and creativity that has always resided within you. Your new beginnings beckon with infinite possibilities, and there is a sense of impeding magic in the air, a sense of something wonderful that is soon to come into view. As you move towards the manifestation of your dreams, you are also shining the light that you are as a beacon of hope for others, and are uplifting the energies for the collective. As you hold the higher ground that you have claimed as your own, you inspire and uplift the people in your sphere of influence. Know that you are perceived from a place of respect and admiration now. The flow of the river of life is sweet and joyous, and you experience many more moments of sublime bliss, as you daily go within to the core of your divine self. You look to the light to conquer and transmute your thoughts as they come in your spiritual practices, and thus gain many new insights and wisdom through this experience. As you connect to the higher version of yourself, you strive to make it even more beautiful and significant, and in so doing, you ignite the light in the hearts of others. Always trust in your powers of perception and intuition. Following this guidance will steer you in the direction of your highest and greatest good. You will stay in the flow of the beneficent energies of the universe, which will unerringly put you on the path of divine and right timing, and everything in your life will work out well. Connecting daily with your divine self brings in its power, beauty, and majesty. The puzzle pieces of your life to the present now come together in exciting and magical ways to create the reality you have been seeking. The adventure of many lifetimes now stretches before you, and you know that you have the tools necessary to make it count. You have everything that you need within you, and you move on to the next step of your spiritual journey with confidence, grace, and ease. By staying present in each moment, you are led unerringly to achieve your highest good in the manifestation of your most heartfelt desires. The road to mastery of self becomes easier because of your willingness to own all of your experiences as an integral part of it. Until next week. I am Hilarion.
Alright. Thank you, Hilarion. That was a good message. Alright. So we got our meditation. For that, here's the Warrior of Light message for today. A warrior of light does not postpone making decisions. He thinks a good deal before he acts. He considers his training as well as his responsibilities and duties as a teacher. He tries to remain calm and to analyze each step as if it were of supreme importance. However, as soon as he makes a decision, the warrior proceeds and has no doubts about his chosen action, nor does he change direction if circumstances turn out differently from how he imagined them. If the decision is correct, then he will win the battle, even if it lasts longer than expected. If his decision is wrong, he will leave defeated and will have to start all over again, only this time with more wisdom. But once he has started, a warrior of light perseveres until the end. Let's go ahead and close your eyes. Take a deep breath and exhale. Take another deep breath. Exhale again. Another breath. Exhale. And just take a moment to contemplate how long you have been walking the path of life. And take a moment to recognize all the times where you've gone down the wrong path, and all the times where you've gone down the right path. And the times when you went down the wrong path, how ultimately we understood it was the wrong path and learned a great deal from that experience and made a correction and got onto the right path. And allow ourselves to think about the differences so we understand the feeling that comes from being on the wrong path and the feeling that comes from being on the right path. And imagine yourself now walking the path. Imagine walking down the path of righteousness, the path that is leading to where you need to be. And as you continue to walk along, with each and every step you feel strength and confidence, knowing that you are moving in the direction that is necessary. And once you've decided this is the path where you need to be, you set forth your intention to complete this journey, and you walk and you move. So let the subconscious mind continue on the journey, moving along the path that we have chosen or has been chosen for us. Let us move along the path of righteousness correctly. Let the subconscious mind continue that way. Let's bring our conscious mind back to the present moment on the count of 3. 3, coming back to the present moment filled with confidence. 2, coming back to the present moment filled with faith. And 1, coming back to the present moment happy, healthy, and whole. Happy, healthy, and whole. Take another deep breath. Exhale and open your eyes. And that's it, my friends. That's the show for today. Thank you so much for being here. The links are available so you can check out everything we did today. Maybe go through and do a little bit more reading on the origin of the world. I'll pick up tomorrow where we left off today. That's it. Have an awesome day. I love you. Keep loving each other. I'll talk to you soon. Peace. I'm out of here.